This is the lore part 1 of the Shadowlands and Murder Castle Nathria. I do have a map to start things out that kind of shows, it's a little bit small here, but it shows the different regions, and then we'll get into all of the other stuff, the cosmology and the zones. But without further ado, I'm just going to stop talking and let Goliath do the heavy lifting over here.
All right. So, gotta get my dwarven Loremaster on here. Gather around, everyone. And no, seriously, this is what I'm here for, and I love doing it. Providing the context. It does. In this case, in particular, this is based on Warcraft's latest expansion that just wrapped up. There's a new dragon-themed one that's coming out later this year. But the one that just came out, so this is kind of unconventional for Hearthstone. A lot of the time they make themes that delve a bit more into the past, something that's generally at least a couple expansions old or a small part of something. This is a bit unusual that they do something quite so recent as the main theme. So if you haven't been playing World of Warcraft recently, it's understandable that you don't really know what's going on here, because they kind of just made a lot of new stuff up and retconned a lot of things. So there's not a lot from any previous lore that you might know from playing the game or whatnot, where you could assume that it just leads up to this. So this essentially, the Shadowlands, this is, I want to say, the afterlife, but it's actually infinite afterlives. It is the realm of death in the cosmology. Looking at the map that Nate has up here on the screen, we're going to be talking about a little bit about each of the areas here. For those of you who are listening via pure audio podcasts, as a reminder for these episodes, we are often very heavily visual here. We have a lot of cards that we're talking about, but we'll do our best to try to describe them so you're not completely missing out here. We do encourage you to watch the visual version, though, if you can. So for a map that Nate has up here on the screen of the Shadowlands, we have in the middle, we have the city of Oribos. We have the realms of Basion, Maldraxus, Revendreth, Ardenweild, and the Maw. And each of these are like a superpower in the realm of death, you might say, but it's actually infinite afterlives, because kind of when working with the lore here, and I suppose because every culture in the game, every race or whatnot, they believe something different about what happens when you die, just like, people in the real world do. And so when you're writing the story and you want to explore what does actually happen when people die, I think that the writers kind of didn't want to invalidate every single culture that they suddenly realize, wow, our whole society and belief system is completely untrue. It's can't imagine where the story would go to, as every race on Azeroth has this complete culture shock, and So what they did was they said that it's all true, that the Shadowlands consists of an infinite amount of afterlives, and souls are sent to one that is deemed appropriate for them based on a multitude of different aspects.
Okay.
And but first, we're going to just pull up a little cosmology chart right here to focus on where the Shadowlands fits in the grand scheme of things. Because, yeah, we're going big here again. We haven't gone quite this big since we talked about old gods. So, right here, we have this pretty little colored chart that is based off of the chart in the Warcraft Chronicle book, which is a official lore book. And basically, right in the middle, you have the physical material plane. And then on either side, you have these parallel planes of existence. On one hand, you have the Emerald Dream. This is the one that's connected with a whole bunch of Druid stuff. Like if you play the Ysera card, you get those Emerald Dream cards. That's the general theming here. And it is basically the realm of life. It's where all that sort of magic comes from. Parallel to that, you have the Shadowlands, which is the inverse. It is the realm of death. And so they are like very opposed, but also very connected together. And that's going to be something that we come back to in a little while. This chart actually here with the cosmology was released all the way back in like 2016. And so we had these blurbs about the Shadowlands and no one knew what they were. And so we were all real excited when an expansion comes along. We finally get to know what the heck these things are.
That's really cool the way they did that.
Oh yeah, they planted seeds of curiosity to get people interested for when it came out years later. And so let's move on to talking about exactly what these areas are.
Yeah, so I've got this little flag looking sort of thing with the 4 different zones. Am I looking at the right thing here?
Just a sec, Yes. So this essentially, there are the 4 covenants that are the rulers of Revendreth. So they're essentially large groups, as I said, sort of the superpowers that are in charge of managing the Shadowlands, and each has a particular role to play. Obviously, as I said, there's infinite afterlives, but these are the 4 big ones. Each of them is ruled over by a member of what's called the Eternal Ones, who are kind of like the pantheon of death, who were created by the first ones, who are like the gods who created gods. It's kind of like if you know Greek mythology, you have like the gods were the children of the Titans, who were the children of the Primordials. It's kind of that type of thing where Blizzard has decided to kind of since a lot of stuff was explained and they lost a lot of mystique about the superpowers that rule the cosmos, they decided to get that back by having, but what about the superpower beings that created those superpower beings? And so we get a bit more of that mystery back again. But we're going to talk a little bit about each of these 4.
Yeah, so we'll be talking about these 4 different groups and where they fit in, but also there was one in the middle, right, when we were looking at this.
Right, and that's where we're starting here. Because this is where souls first enter the Shadowlands when they die. It is called the Eternal City, Oribos, and it is presided over by a being called the Arbiter. The Arbiter is the only being in the Shadowlands who has the ability to, in an instant, be able to see everything there is to know about a soul, about their history, their moral choices, their beliefs, their culture, just everything. Everything is unbared so that the Arbiter can make the best possible unbiased decision about where this soul deserves to go in the infinite afterlives. Sometimes they are sent to a place that is a bit more of their culture, like with the beliefs. Like I'm sure that orcs are very much about revering their ancestors, and they have a very specific type of place they like to go. So many of them probably go there. But others, it's a bit more of a personality type of thing, which is where we're going to go for some of these. And others, it's the type of magic that you were attuned to in life will take you a certain other place. And so, basically the Arbiter is the one who sends you to wherever it is that you need to go here. But then you might have the question that how do souls get to Oribos? And that is where Basion comes in, which is the first of the main 4 realms that we are talking about here. And is also where we're finally going to get to talk about a couple of cards.
Hey.
Basion doesn't have many cards that are devoted to it, but it does have a couple that we will get to. So, Basion is the realm of service. It is the place where only the most selfless souls go, those who lived entirely for others. And they are given the sacred duty of carrying souls to the Shadowlands. They're essentially like Valkyries from Norse mythology who would take the slain warriors up to Odin's Hall, except there is a version of an Odin already in Warcraft, and he has his own Valkyr, which he actually, according to lore, he looked into the Shadowlands and saw these beings are called the Kyrian, and he's like, ooh, I like that. I'm going to make my own version of those. So that's where the the Valkyrie cards come from. They're basically Odin trying to make copies of the Kyrian that work for him.
That's funny.
Cool.
Yeah. And the Basion and the Kyrian are ruled over by the Archon, who's this lady that you see here. She is another one of those eternal ones that we were speaking of, the first of this pantheon of death in the Shadowlands that we're meeting. And they have their own structure. Well, there are various institutions and positions known as paragons that kind of oversee different aspects. Most of the Shadowlands often have a bit of a bureaucratic structure, council advisors, various different versions. We won't go into all the politics of that because we'd be here even longer than forever. But essentially, we do have just a few things to talk about with the way that it works, and that is where our two cards come in. We got a Priest Legendary and a Paladin Legendary, who are representing some of the main parts of Basion. So let's see, which is our first card we're talking about here?
Pelagos.
Pelagos, all right. So Pelagos is a major character for players in Basion. He is he's an ascendant. He's someone who is working on a path. A soul that wants to become a Kyrian has been determined that it's best for them, but you have to go on various trials in order to be able to really prepare your soul. Because the thing is that you can't have any judgment when you're carrying a soul to the afterlife. That's reserved for the Arbiter, who knows best about all this stuff. And so you can't have someone who is biased taking a soul and thinking, oh, I don't like this one. I'm just going to throw them into the realm of eternal punishment on my own. And so that's it's part of the process. It's about like a cleansing of negative memories. And at one point, they were even that Kyrian had to be cleansed of all of their memories and have no idea of their past lives, which actually created a big rift and a bit of a civil war in Basion, which is one of the main storylines that you follow in that zone. But eventually, they decided to reconcile and allow Ascendants to choose whether they wanted to keep their memories or not, which is a lot more fair, in my opinion. And so, yeah, Pelagos is one of those types of characters. He is a character that within the game you can develop a soul bind with, which is essentially meaning that it's a mechanic where you can choose him and like he gives you some special powers that you get to use essentially. And for each covenant, there's 3 different characters that you get to use, and he's one of them for Basion.
Okay.
Fun thing about
like
Pelagos.
marriage.
It kind of is in the sense where it is it's the true knowing of each other, but like, everybody's dead. So like, it's not really marriage, but it is that extreme closeness about something like marriage and a familial relationship all bound together. But yeah, an interesting thing about Pelagos is that, I guess spoilers for anyone who still wanted to complete the end of the Shadowlands story right now. But Pelagos actually ends up becoming the new Arbiter after the existing one is kind of rendered non-working through various complicated story aspects that we'll touch on a little bit later when we talk about the dark side of the Shadowlands. But
Okay.
yeah, but basically, at this point in the story, Pelagos is the new Arbiter who has the ability to, know the souls and send them to the right spot. So, pretty major character in the grand cosmological scale of things overall.
Can we?
But yes,
And can we briefly talk about, because there's a question in chat here about Bluther.
Oh,
I know
yes.
we'll get to it later, but I know when they were releasing Shadowlands, and prior to that, there was all these like animated trailers, and we've seen Uther like, blue with wings, and it was like, oh, what is this now?
That's because Uther was one of those selfless souls who was chosen to go to Basion. Now, remember what I said about why you have to have an unbiased Kyrian when they're ferrying the souls? Uther is an example of that because he was one of the Kyrian who was ascended before he was ready and assisted because he was killed by Arthas, after Arthas got corrupted, became a Death Knight and the Lich King and all of that. And, it was a whole student goes evil and betrays the master type of storyline. They're basically kind of an Anakin Obi-Wan thing. But Uther's part of his soul was actually stuck in Frostmourne, and he was kind of divided and not really all there and all right. And out of a kind of confused sense between vengeance and justice, he and his not sure what the right word here, kind of like your mentor in a sense, like his mentor to help him become a Kyrian, decided that now we're not going to wait for the Arbiter stuff. We're just going to take Arthas' soul and chuck him into the eternal realm of punishment without any actual trial or judgment or anything. So that's kind of, but then later on, like Uther gets healed and regrets that decision and everything. Yes, Uther gets it. But yeah, the blue version of Uther, that is him as a Kyrian.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Sorry for that, but
no problem.
Good question. Okay, so we have one other legendary though.
But yeah, I mean, forget about all this grand cosmological stuff and moral dilemmas and all that. We're going to talk about the cute owls, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so here we have Stewart the Steward. Stewart is, in fact, an actual NPC in World of Warcraft. He's an extremely minor one, but he is one of an entire race. Honestly, I'm not entirely certain why they chose him to kind of represent the stewards instead of one that has a name and is also a bit more involved with the story, because there are others, but maybe they kind of wanted to pick someone who had a name and was more minor because they can play around, as Hearthstone without contradicting anything.
And look at his cute little face. That's why.
Yes. Well, see, all the stewards are these little, owl-like creatures here. And
they all are?
There is an entire race of them in Basion. They are automatically created from the anima. Anima is the soul essence and energy that fuels the Shadowlands. Like, everything runs on anima. The air is saturated with it. Machinery in the realms of death runs on anima. Anima is just everywhere. It's going to become very important later on.
I was going to say that, and that is, I read a dev post that they almost called the new infuse mechanic anima instead.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's the idea. When something dies, like, it creates anima or whatever.
Absorbing that essence, yes.
So instead of Van Halen's Panama, we could do Anima.
Anima.
Anima. Yeah, I just jotted that down.
Good.
Glorious.
Put that on the list of parody songs, I guess.
So I saw a quest in WoW called Stewart's Stupendous Stew. What is that?
That is where he's from, actually. It's just a smaller quest where he is basically being attacked and you need to help defend him and his stew or something. It's a minor thing in WoW, but it is there, and that is basically his only real appearance as far as I'm currently aware. Unless he has cameos in other areas.
Stewart the Steward makes stew? It doesn't get much more perfect than that. That's incredible.
Stewart the Steward stew, yes. So their whole thing is that they are spontaneously kind of created from the anima as the caretakers of Basion. They are a combination of artificers that they build things and the custodians. They help to clean everything up. There's a lot of players in the community who mistakenly get on their high horse and act like they are an enslaved race and this is unfair. It's like, no, it's literally in their nature that they're spontaneously created, not even created by sentient beings for a purpose. They just pop into existence with this innate desire to keep things tidy and stuff, they get depressed if you don't let them do their chores. It actually takes a lot of persuasion. There is literally a place in Basion that is dedicated to giving the stewards some vacation time, and it takes a lot of convincing to get them to take some time off from their duties and be able to like go to a party or just kick back and relax or something. And they are incredibly adorable, as I said. And in fact, if you become a member of Basion with your character, you get the ability where you can summon your own personal steward that helps you out with things. So if you like him that much, Sheep, if you ever play WoW and he gets to Shadowlands, maybe you'll want to have your character join Basion just so you can have his personal steward.
I would.
Master has presented Dobby with clothes.
Dobby is a free house elf.
Yeah, it's not the whole house elf thing. This is no actual slavery involved, contrary to what many people on social media seem to believe for whatever reason. But yeah, that is basically our look at Basion. It doesn't get the biggest spotlight in this expansion. Maybe more can be visited either in Miniset or at some other expansion in the long distant future. I never know.
I want a hero portrait. I mean,
yeah.
Can you just imagine the emotes? They'd be great.
Oh yeah, no,
I can.
Of a steward. Oh, that'd be fantastic.
All right, so let's talk about location number 2. We're talking now about Maldraxus.
Correct. Now, while Basion is about, it's dedicated to those who lived lives of service, and they allow basically, in reward for your service, you get to keep on doing service for eternity.
Oh my god, that's terrible. The reward for good work is more work. Have you heard that before? Oh,
yeah.
Yeah,
no.
When you really think about it, it's not the greatest. The assumption with the Arbiter is that only people who are actually really suited to that would be sent there. But so for Maldraxus is a realm of eternal war because it is the afterlife for people who lived for battle and combat, like the people who had, like the bloodlust who just do not even like it when peace comes. The great warriors who just like, you were fighting all your life? Did you like fighting? Your reward in the afterlife is to spend all of eternity fighting.
Valhalla.
Kind of Valhalla stuff. The goal is that they are the protectors of the Shadowlands who help to protect the Realm of Death from invasions of any other cosmic force. There have been invasions in the past from the Void, for example. There was a time when, we'll get into this particular story more next time talking about Revendreth, but there was a time where there was a bit of provocation and the Lights ended up doing some invasion. And basically if any other force on that cosmological chart that we looked at earlier, if that invades the Shadowlands, the whole point of Maldraxus is that they fend them off and keep it as an independent realm of cosmology. Just like death takes care of death, okay? Just like, don't you guys interfere. But it's divided into several houses that rule over different areas. There's like the House of Eyes, which is all about spying and espionage. The House of Constructs, which is about flesh shaping. Basically, they create like the afterlife version of abominations. And don't ask me how it works with like they're dead, so they're souls, but they have flesh crafting as though we're still alive. Because I don't understand that part, and I don't know if they've actually explained how that works in the lore. But essentially, there's a lot of difference. There's like the House of Plagues, which is focused on like that sort of like, you know, the undead cards are like the mad scientists and everything. They're often making plagues. This is like super version of that. And so
plagued scientist?
Yeah, basically. Yes, exactly.
Science!
And that is where those people go when they die. Because it is very green there. It's like everyone's fighting in arenas and coming up with new ways to kill each other. And it's not a place that I would ever want to go. But that's the way that works.
So who's the Primus? And let's talk about Primus.
Is it Les Claypool?
Well, the Primus is another one of the Eternal Ones. He is the ruler of Maldraxus, and he created a lot of stuff that has affected people. Actually, you know, the Lich King has the Helm of Domination, and there's all like the runic language that the Death Knights have. You know how there's, if you're on the board from Knights of the Frozen Throne, there's that one area where you can like click and it'll turn like different color runes or something.
Oh,
that's
yeah.
It's a whole thing about Death Knights having runic magic. This guy is the one who invented this stuff. The language of domination. And it's essentially something that they made to punish a being who we'll talk about a little bit later, known as the Jailer. But then the Jailer was kind of able to take what was his prison and turn it on the world. So the Primus later really regretted having invented domination magic. But he is the one who created a lot of that stuff initially. And he is a really smart, wise guy. Like, for someone who rules over a realm of eternal conflict, he's relatively chill in comparison. He was missing for a really long time until you were able to find him in the game and kind of, restore him to his former power and everything.
Okay.
But he's a really big ally in the game once you finally do track him down. But he's not in it for a lot of the beginning of it. You just hear about him.
So if this is the realm of war, I suppose that makes sense why there's so many characters who reside here. So we've got 4, it looks like 4 of our class legendaries who are hanging out in Maldraxus. These names are so funny. I think like Jiraxus and Naxxramas and Maldraxus. You face Maldraxus. All right.
Yeah, sorry. It sounds rap worthy. Honestly, a lot of them sound similar enough. You can string them all together for a rapid fire.
Don't tempt me.
Oh, here we go. Another parody song.
Nate's the one who's the better rapper around here than me. So
I quite enjoy it. All right. Well, here's our homeboy Kel'Thuzad.
Yes,
Kel'Thuzad the Inevitable.
So yes, this is representing, as said, we're at a point in Hearthstone where we're used to many different iterations of characters and cards. They're kind of representing different aspects of what they can do or different periods in their story. So I believe we've talked about Kel'Thuzad before here, haven't we?
Oh, several times.
Our first one was Scholomance. So that was beginning Kel'Thuzad when he's still like human and everything back at Scholomance Academy. This here is Kel'Thuzad after he's died like 3 times.
That's more than two.
I got it! So, as a recap, Kel'Thuzad was initially a human mage turned necromancer who worked for the Lich King. Then he died and was resurrected as a Lich by Arthas the Death Knight and the Lich King. So that's death number 1. Then we kill him in the first Naxxramas raid, which, of course, the very first Hearthstone adventure is based off of, and that's death number 2. But Liches have a phylactery, and so unless that phylactery container is destroyed, they can never truly die. And so he comes back in the second version of the Naxxramas raid, which is in Wrath of the Lich King. And then, of course, because it's a raid, he dies again. So that's death number 3. And at this point, his phylactery finally gets destroyed, and he's finally stuck in the Shadowlands. Now, you would think that someone who committed as many crimes as Kel'Thuzad did would end up in the realm of eternal damnation, which is the Maw, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But he ended up, whether rightly or if there was a little bit of dark manipulation going on there, it's kind of unknown. He ended up in Maldraxus because of his strong conviction, desire to, be able to, create biological weapons and zombies and all that. Basically, like, you're really good at this conflict and trying to beat people type of stuff. So let's put that to use in Maldraxus, was essentially the logic. He became ruler of the House of Rituals, which is all about like summoning and liches and all that sort of thing. And
so that makes
complete sense with the new card. Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah, I was going to say that's why he's now resurrecting volatile skeletons.
Exactly. Now, he actually is a major antagonist in Shadowlands because he allies with some of the other more villainous people.
Big shocker there.
Yeah, exactly. So he is a raid boss again in Shadowlands, where he's finally killed for good, and he's like, how is the power of death not answering me this time? He's just like in complete disbelief that he doesn't get it. He's used to getting another shot every time he dies. So this is that's why he's like, I am inevitable, I'm always gonna come back. Well, you get to the point where he's not coming back again. But this is really, and it makes sense, again, he was initially a mage in life, and he often is, ice themed about things, and so it makes sense they make him a mage legendary here. Moving on then, who is our next one? We are talking about Draka. Yes, Draka. So
hey, I opened Draka in gold.
Nice. Do you know who Draka is?
Not yet.
Draka is Thrall's mom.
Whoa.
Yeah. So,
I was going to say, wasn't she in that Warcraft movie?
Yes, exactly. Hey, I'm impressed that you remember some of those orc names from the Warcraft movie. But yeah, Durotan and Draka were Thrall's parents, and they actually died while trying to protect Thrall from assassins that were sent by Gul'dan, because they were opposing the whole orc should, embrace the fell magic thing. And so Gul'dan sent assassins to take them all out. They missed little baby Thrall there, which is how he ended up getting found by a human and adopted, and that whole story started. But because Draka died defending her child, when her soul went to the afterlife, she still had that fighting spirit. Like, she just wasn't done fighting. And so she ended up going to Maldraxus and became the assistant, eventually person in charge of the House of Eyes. So she was all about the espionage, and that's why she's a rogue card right here, because she had that sort of vanish in the shadows and stab with the daggers type of thing. And then eventually her house actually got sabotaged because Kel'Thuzad, as part of his manipulations, turned the houses against each other in order to, I will rule Maldraxus type of thing.
Rude.
Or take its power from my master and all of that. But Draka managed to survive and joined another group called the House of the Chosen. And she is one of your principal allies and guides through Maldraxus when you play in the Shadowlands. So again, very major character. She's actually the Baroness of the House of the Chosen, one of the key rulers of that faction. So yeah, she's pretty big over in Maldraxus. She has a lot of pull.
Oh, very cool. Well, and big character too. Thrall's mom. Okay.
Oh yeah.
Huge.
Did you just say, oh, yeah?
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
All right. We have another very memorable character here that we've seen many times, especially lately. So, Lady Vashj is now Baroness Vashj and has made a comeback. We've seen Vashj so many times now between like all of the crazy shenanigans with Illidan and Outland, and then all of the stuff with the Naga, and seen her transformation from the Night Elf into this Naga, and like she has been all around everywhere. So how now did she wind up here, and what is her new role?
Yes. Yep, we get Vashj, and again, this is one of those cases where, as you mentioned, there are characters here who are dead elsewhere. This is why we get to see them. It is interesting when you get to see the characters, some of which, because she was a raid boss, you killed. And then you run into their souls later on in the afterlife.
Like,
funny thing
not
is that
you again.
she has different dialogue depending on whether you completed the raid that killed her or not. So it's like,
Cool.
we meet again. Or if you didn't play through that, you're like, what's your story? And she gives a brief summary or something. But so Vashj is actually so initially, like I said, that Draka is now the Baroness of the House of the Chosen, but she was initially Baroness of the House of Eyes, which, as I said, was all about the spying. Every house has two barons or baronesses, and Vashj is the other one.
Oh.
So she is the other surviving Baroness of Eyes who doesn't really have much of a house to rule over. But since they're all about the spying, many of the souls that are in Maldraxus that are about the spying take on this spider-like form, which would have been really cool if we ever got a card with depicting those types of things. But basically, she is a master of espionage in the realm of eternal battle and death. And again, it was, kind of her thing when she was alive, managing forces for Illidan, for Queen Azshara when she served her, and all of that. So to just, it's like when you have that one skill set that you've made it really far in a career and there's not really anywhere else you can reasonably go.
You're describing
nodding, knowing.
You're describing me right now, for good or for bad.
And so basically that's kind of what happens to her at death. She's like, well, this is what I'm good at. I'm just going to keep on. And she works her way up the ranks. And yeah, she is an ally, although a reluctant one. Yeah, it's actually a lot of the ones that you kill. There is sometimes let bygones be bygones. Sure, you killed me in life, but we're trying to prevent all of existence falling apart right now. So whatever. So she's not actually overtly hostile. She just kind of needs you to prove yourself to prove that that you're worth her putting some resources and effort behind. But yeah, Baroness Vashj, and of course it makes sense that she is Shaman Legendary, seeing as they made her initial card in Ashes of Outland to be Shaman. I wouldn't say that the character herself is a shaman, but the types of elemental magic that Naga often wield, it lends itself to the flavor, and Hearthstone needs a character for every class, so I don't blame them at all for putting her like that.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Okay, so our next one, I think, caused a little bit of confusion for people early on when this was first revealed, which is great, I think, for us to be covering, initially what the Shadowlands are before we get into the characters. And so this next one is Olgra!
Yes. So, we've already touched on the story of Olgra back when we talked about the Baron's cards, but as a recap, Olgra is essentially almost more of a meme than anything in the community, because it comes from this one just basic quest in the Barons of the Orc Mankrik, who, is card that got us all talking about this in Hearthstone in the first place.
Help me find my wife.
Yes, who asked you to help find her. And then as a refresher, what got the quest rather famous and memeable was that it was in the Barrens, which back then was this really huge zone that later got split into a northern and a southern Barrens. But so in this huge zone, back then there were no quest markers. So people were looking all over to find Olgra, and it became like the thing that everyone was talking about in the game chat in the Barren zone. And so that's how it became so famous. It's this thing that you finally find her body. It's not obvious at all. And so the quest was kind of infamous for that. And so it turns out that she was killed by a bunch of Quillbore. You go back to Mankrik. He gets all mad, tells you to kill a bunch of Quillbore in vengeance. And he has like a funeral pyre for her or whatnot. And so they decided for Shadowlands, while they're exploring, you know, what happened to some of those characters who died in various ways, whether we killed them or they died in our arms or whatever. They decided, what the heck, let's throw an Easter egg about Olgra. And so, since she is another one who went down fighting against those Quillbore, then they decided to send her soul to Maldraxus as well. What was that?
Another one.
Who died fighting?
That's right.
Yes. And so, yeah, no real fantasy story. She doesn't really have a large role to play in the game, but she's a fun Easter egg. And so it makes sense they would choose to bring it full circle here in Hearthstone, since they took the original Olgra meme, turned it into a card that everybody knows at this point. To like, hey, let's just show what happened to her. So for everyone who was confused about Olgra, that's why she's here. This is her super-powered dead Realm of the Dead warrior version.
Her diamond card is really cool, by the way.
Kicking
like
rad,
goes out swinging.
Oh yeah, big time. It's very neat. I like it, and yeah, it's kind of fun when they make a meme and you know, come full circle with it. So
yeah.
All right, so we now have covered the Basion and Maldraxus, and it looks like we're moving on to the Ardenweild.
Correct. So Ardenweild is the realm of nature in the Shadowlands. It is actually very strongly linked to the Emerald Dream, which, as we mentioned before, they are essentially two sides of the same coin, because Ardenweild is all about the cycle of life and death in nature. If it's kind of like the Emerald Dream is spring and summer, Ardenweild is like fall and winter. It's like the natural cycle of seasons. You have death and life and rebirth. Ardenweild is where souls go who are very, very strongly connected to nature, particularly wild gods and Loa. So, you know, remember all those Loa cards that we got back in Rastakan's Rumble? All of those ones that are animals? This is where they go, and why they can't really be truly killed, because eventually they come back. In fact, as we're going to touch into a little bit with one of the cards, this is where wild seeds come in. It's where the souls go until they have matured for a while, absorbed enough anima, and then they are ready to spend some time in the afterlife until it's time to return to the mortal plane.
Real quick digression. Right after Rastakan's Rumble came out, and you know, we learned all about the Loa, and that was really cool. Whenever you guided us through so much of that. Right after that, I went to New Orleans and went on a history tour, and the Loa were like a thing that they were telling us all about right then. So that was really cool to like connect those two. So I know that we just touched base on the Loa, but
is based very heavily on Baron Samedi, and you know, it's kind of the similar attitude. There's the Loa of death, but there's a bit of the fun trickster element in there as well. And yeah, it actually Buon Samdi, the gate to his personal world of the other side, which is where the troll spirits go. As I said, sometimes it's your race as well. Buon Samdi is the Loa of Death. He particularly takes care of troll spirits.
Cool.
And the gate to that is actually in Ardenweild. And there is a dungeon called Other Side where you're helping Buon Samdi to help address a more nasty Loa of Death known as Muzala, who was the previous Loa before Buon Samdi took on the role. So yeah, that's there's a connection with Ardenweild right there too.
Cool.
And it's ruled over by this lovely lady who we have up here, the Winter Queen, who is actually the sister of Elune, the moon goddess
Oh.
worshipped by the Night Elves. Again, and Elune has a strong connection with the Emerald Dream. So again, we have the cycle and the synergy. And so this is the sort of thing that very powerful druids will often, have a connection with as well. And so moving on to our two legendaries who are featured characters in Ardenweild. Let's see, which is our first one?
First up is Cecily.
Yeah.
Yes. So Cecily here is a member of a tree-like race that is known as the Turnin. I think that's how you pronounce it. They kind of purposefully created the language and names of this race to be kind of unpronounceable, to kind of represent just how foreign they are to our minds, our senses, and it's another thing that's rather Entish inspired from Lord of the Rings. Like, they have their big long language that takes forever to say and they're never hasty. It's kind of like that with the way that their names work here. But they are a tree-like race named Ardenweild. They are a member of a group of various creatures that are collectively called the Fae Court, the Night Fae. They are generally friendly. They're quiet, thoughtful, as I said, very Ent-inspired, where they're slow to anger, but they are a terror on the battlefield if you manage to get them angry, which takes a lot of effort because they can shape the land. In fact, that's one of their principal jobs in Ardenweild, is that they help to shape the world through, raising roots and rocks and all of that stuff. So that they are essentially like the native caretakers of the world. They are so ancient and so incomprehensible that even other members of the Fae Court, we're talking like other relatively eternal supernatural beings who live in the realm of death, even some of them don't understand these guys at all.
Cool.
Very
Wow.
enigmatic there. And this is a particular one that does exist in the game. There's no particular story behind this individual. It's more just like a representative of the race, just one who gives a few quests and is in a certain area near a flight path or whatnot. Kind of like Stewart, just like kind of representing that these guys exist. And this is a minor character that there's not really much we can contradict here. So we're just going to have some fun with it for Hearthstone.
Nice.
I think that the devs on Twitter actually said that they chose Cecily specifically because it was the most pronounceable of
That's hilarious. Let's make it easy on everybody.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, like some of them, it's like the sound is almost like the sound of a twig snapping or something with the way that it's written out. I'd have to look up to see some of them, but yeah, there are some crazy impronounceable ones there, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
All right, our other one here in the Ardenweild is Ara'lon.
Yeah, so Ara'lon is a guy who we actually do have a story for. He is, again, another member of the Night Fae, known as a Sylvian. They're sort of like satyr, like they're, humanoids with hooves and antlers and such. And he is a tender of a grove. So Ardenweild consists of lots of small groves of trees where the wild seeds are nurtured. Again, like you have a soul of, say, a powerful Loa or another wild god. This is the sort of people like Cenarius would come here. Just like all of them. They would be in these wild seeds, and it is the job of a grove tender like Ara'lon to help make sure that they are protected, that they are nourished with anima, because because it's possible to die in the Shadowlands, and like the type of death where like you just don't exist anymore at all. You're just anima scattered to the wind. There's no afterlife after the afterlife or anything. So again, that's why being someplace like Maldraxus actually has risks. But in Ardenweild here, it's about taking care of it. There's a little problem for our buddy here though, because one of the things that's a story within the Shadowlands expansion is that there's this mysterious anima drought. So, like I said, anima is normally everywhere. It's saturating the air. All the souls are just kind of bringing it. But there's this drought, and anima is a very scarce source. And so, Ara'lon here is forced to make a choice about whether to tend his grove or whether to sacrifice it for the greater good and the wild seeds that are in there, because some of the groves have to be culled in order to preserve mana for the greater good for other ones. And so it's this hard decision that a lot of the Night Fae have to make, and he ends up joining the Wild Hunt in order to try to, which is the group here. It's not like the Wild Hunt in mythology, which is like the army of ghosts led by Odin that marches on Halloween, or like in The Witcher 3 or anything, which are really cool, but that's not what they are here. Here it's just this army of the Night Fae who are working to defend Ardenweild and have to make the difficult decision about where does the limited anima go.
That's
now,
really
thankfully, yeah.
Because he actually abandoned his grove and joined the Wild Hunt is probably why I was thinking, first, Tender of the Grove sounds like a druid card. Fact that he makes that tough
Literally
decision is why he is not a druid card.
He's a
in
hunter
practice
card,
here. Yeah, that's
Interesting.
cool.
Exactly.
Well, the other piece that is really cool is like that explains why the wild seeds start out dormant.
Yeah.
Right? Because they're like in their seed dormant stage, and they have to.
Oh, that makes sense.
Right? That's really
exactly. And here's a fun fact. During the quest here, you are entrusted, your character, you kind of make a bond with this one particular wild seed, and you're entrusted with caring for it and giving it some anima in order to survive. And it almost doesn't make it, but you manage to get an audience with the Winter Queen at last, which is kind of your entire quest throughout all of Ardenweild. You're just trying to catch up with the Winter Queen, but she's so busy with all of her duties, you keep on missing her and everything. Because you need her help with the grander Shadowlands storyline. But eventually you're able to get it to her, and she is able to help save the seed. And who pops out? It's Ysera. Because Ysera was killed back in stuff involving the Burning Legion and the Emerald Nightmare way back in the Legion expansion. And like all things connected to the Emerald Dream, she went to become a wild seed. And then so now at this point in the story, she is connected and basically can't leave Ardenweild. And so that's where she resides now. So actually, one of the Battlegrounds skins for Ysera is like a version of her in Ardenweild, if I remember correctly. So yes, I love the alternate skins for Battlegrounds. There's so many cool things.
Oh, there's so many good ones. I wish that we could use
I can't
them.
afford them all, unfortunately. But no, I did spring for the dragon ones that came out though, because that was really neat, and the Shadowlands ones.
And
Oh wait, there's more.
There's several that I really like the themes of.
Understandable. They're kicking rad.
Oh yeah.
But at any rate, yeah. So it's feasibly possible that we could get another version of Ysera at some point that is like Ysera, Warden of Ardenweild or something, and they could have done. Who knows? That there's lots of directions people could go for mini set, and so there's a whole lot of Shadowlands characters that have play major roles that are not cards here. Ones we're talking about today, and ones that we're going to save till later. But so Ysera has a thing here, and it's possible at some point in the future we could get a card reflecting that. Speaking of things that people love, let me tell you that the next one, Covenant, that we're talking about here is my personal favorite. This is the one that I had my main character join in Shadowlands because I absolutely love the aesthetic. And it's the main one that we're focusing on in the set, which is, if you had to pick one to focus on in the set, I'm really stoked that they decided to talk about Revendreth. So, Revendreth is essentially, it's a bit of a purgatorial realm here. So, the Maw is the realm of eternal damnation where the absolute worst of the worst go. But Revendreth is a chance for people to avoid getting thrown into the Maw by atoning for their sins. A lot of the time, it's about getting that pesky pride off of them that, when you're really proud of something and you refuse to admit that you've done anything wrong, that's kind of the first step in being able to cleanse prideful souls so that they can finally say, hey, I was wrong to commit absolute genocides, and maybe I should, try to atone for that or something. Like, it takes a lot to get those souls to have a chance of doing that. But the ones who are up to the task are Sire Denathrius and the race that he created in his own image called the Venthyr. And the whole place just has this awesome, like gothic, vampiric, Castlevania aesthetic.
It's so
that I just
Castlevania.
love. Yes, it is amazing. So yeah, they are focused on the purging of sin and harvesting anima through it. They're masters of anima extraction. That's generally the therapy that is used to motivate the souls to, maybe not think quite so highly of themselves. They're put through many different forms of learning humility, like being hunted through this forest and everything. Remember, it's only like people who've done really messed up stuff who go here in the first place. So theoretically, it's all for their own good. However, Denathrius kind of fell to the dark side at some unknown points in time. And remember I mentioned there was an anima drought that was going on? He kind of artificially caused that by hoarding all of the anima for himself and pretending that there's just this scarcity. And because it's all part of his bigger plan and allying with the jailer down in the Maw. Because what Denathrius wants is to free the jailer from his imprisonment down in the Maw, and together they will conquer, reshape all of reality to where death is the only power that matters. And you know what's even crazier? Denathrius is responsible for, indirectly, the creation of the Burning Legion.
What?
Okay, so
Please explain.
so you may recall that the Burning Legion was created by the fallen titan Sargeras after he had this whole run-in about learning about an old god-infested world and freaking out and deciding that it's better to just burn away all of creation, to burn away all corruption, and maybe it'll grow back someday. But a dead universe is better than a corrupted one. The thing is that Sargeras was influenced to discover that old god-infested world that freaked him out so much, and first learned about the void from the Dreadlords, the Nathrazim, who were initially created by Sire Denathrius, Denathrius, as the race of the ultimate infiltrators. I kid you not. He had this whole 4D chess game about the Nathrazim first provoking a fight with the light. As I said, there was the time where the light came in and invaded the Shadowlands. That was because they discovered that the Nathrazim had been sent to infiltrate and spy and sabotage them, so they've retaliated. Because of this, in order to appease the light, the Nathrazim were exiled from the Shadowlands. But that was all part of the plan, because then they ended up getting exiled into the material plane, having their own planet and everything, and then kind of getting into the Fel, becoming demons, and influencing Sargeras to have the whole Burning Legion. Basically, all of that stuff was ultimately all a part of Denathrius's plan. He is like ultimate 4D cosmic chess here. And he's
so
also
he thinks big.
Yes.
It sounds like the plot of an Ocean's 11, Ocean's 12 movie.
He's also voiced by Matt Mercer, so
that'll do it.
Yes. But yeah, so talking about some of the characters here, we of course have Sire Denathrius himself, who is our big, I would say he's the poster boy, but he's more like the painting boy of the expansion here.
Right.
And
I get what you did there.
We literally have a card that's eerie painting, where it's like a picture of himself and everything. But then we also have one of our warrior legendaries, who is his sentient flying sword named Remora. And yeah, this animated sentient weapons thing is just a thing that Venthyr have. They're actually all over Revendreth, but his is particularly powerful, and Remora is bloodthirsty. Like, I don't know whether she was initially like that from her creation, or whether it just rubbed off from being around Sire Denathrius so long, but she's like, "Oh, master, please let me cut them to ribbons," and she just like revels in it all. And so, yeah, it's a weapon that's a character as well. And I think it's really clever how they did that by translating into the mechanics of it being both a weapon that you wield and a minion. It's like, a character on the board and everything.
Well, and
then
I was gonna say, I heard that Renathal had one as well, but if you say all of Venthyr have them, then maybe
well, not all of them do, but there are other ones that exist.
Okay.
They're probably not as powerful, but yes, Prince Renathal has one, and unfortunately, her name is slipping my mind at the moment.
I'll look it up while you're looking. But we will get. So we're not going to cover too deeply some of, I think, the Revendreth characters and cards. Like, I think the plan was to save some of that for the next part.
Right. So we're just doing a brief overview of Revendreth for the sake of giving a complete map of the Shadowland powers here, to provide a good backdrop for when we go into all this later on. So all you need to know now about Renathal is that he knows that Denathrius is up to no good, and he's actually one of the original Venthyr who was first created by Denathrius. There's actually many Venthyr who are souls that, after they completed their reform, that they have the choice of moving on to another afterlife or staying and becoming a Venthyr themselves to help other souls. And there are many who are like that, but Renathal is one of the original ones. Who was like, you might almost say he's like Denathrius's oldest son in that sense. And so it's the kind of that classic story of the more virtuous. It's basic. I mentioned this in a day or two ago. It's basically the Castlevania Alucard story, where you have the more virtuous vampire-like character who is using his powers against his father, who is kind of like Denathrius is a little like Dracula in this case. And so that's essentially all you need to know about these guys right now. Stay tuned for part 2 for more details.
The sword, by the way, is Vorpalia.
Orpelia, yep. Probably named after the Vorpal blade from the famous Jabberwock, which, of course, we have our Shudderwock and the Bandersmosh cards. So
Right, yeah. Love it.
maybe we'll get her at some point. Who knows?
Hey.
Uh,
Okay, so you were
but
talking about the maw, and I'm gonna cut back very briefly to the map of this whole thing. And so you talked about these locations. So the maw you mentioned is the one where the bad people go, right?
Yes, the unrepentant worst of the worst are the ones who are supposed to be sent to the maw.
So they all try to escape all the time.
Well, the maw is designed that no one ever escapes it.
Oh.
In fact, the jailer who is there, who initially mentioned, the Primus created the language magic of domination to exile him there. He was actually his real name is Zovald, and he was the original arbiter. But so back when all things started, he was the one who decided which souls went where. But he became obsessed with gaining ultimate control and remaking reality for, again, kind of similar to Sargeras, what he saw as like this broken universe that can't survive the greater threat or whatnot. And the type of person who becomes obsessed, it doesn't matter how many people I have to force into eternal suffering, I must fix the universe. And so all of the other eternal ones who rule these other areas that we just talked about turned on him and exiled him down into the maw. Although some of them are wondering if Denathrius might have even been working with him back then. There's little hints where he says things like, "You could have shown another way. There's so much we could have done together." And don't know if there's a little double speak there or whatnot. They're like, "I was with you all along. You blew with a cover. I'm keeping my cover here." But yeah, and so what happens is that the Arbiter gets broken, like, because they made a new one after Zoval was exiled. And so because of all that, every soul is going down into the maw. The innocent and the guilty alike. That is the big thing that you're trying to fix and stop the jailer. That's the reason that your character goes to the Shadowlands in the first place. And so all of those souls are making the jailer stronger and the maw more powerful.
I see. I forget. Sorry, before we get too deep into that, I forgot we had a couple other things from Revendreth, the Countess, the Harvester, the Stonewright.
Yes.
I apologize. I skipped ahead a little bit.
Yeah, so it's all tied together. Because as I mentioned, there are Venthyr that Sire Denathrius created, and then there are others who have kind of taken on other roles. It essentially has a council of ones. As I said, there's bureaucracies and stuff for all of these different factions here. But these minions are some of the ones who are entrusted with a portion of power. Every one of them is given a medallion that is like their badge of office, and as Denathrius's power infused right into it. And so the Countess, the Harvester of Endi, and the Stonewright are all members who have those official positions. And so they're players who can either become allies, enemies, or somewhere in between during the story where you're working to overthrow Denathrius. Because there's some who are fanatically loyal to him and who you have to remove and find replacements to fill the office. And there are others who you convert to become allies. But yeah, that's something that will go more into individually their stories. Whether there's a lot or little to talk about. Again, that'll be a part of our deep dive into Revendreth and the Castle Nathria raid that a lot of these bosses are based on.
Cool. And then the last thing I have here is the Stoneborn General in terms of Revendreth.
Right. Yes, that is something that's important to know. Again, we'll go more into it later, but just a bit of explanation about the Stonewright and stuff. So basically, you got this whole gargoyle aesthetic where they create these soldiers out of stone and infuse them, bring them to life with anima. Again, anima is used for everything here. So that is just where all of them come in. They play a very key role, both, some are allies, some are enemies in your quests in Revendreth. And yeah, that's essentially the rule that these cards are here for. There's a few of them, so I figured it would be good to get that explanation taken care of first, in case people are wondering what's with all the gargoyles.
It's very
It
Castlevania.
sounds,
Yes.
yeah. It sounds like a lot of the characters in the Shadowlands are animaniacs.
Oh,
There's zany
gosh.
to the max.
That was good. That was good.
Baloney in our sex?
I wonder if there's karaoke of that song.
Oh, I'm sure.
There's no way there isn't.
Anyway, we have a few more things to talk about. We're almost at the end here for our very brief overview of the Shadowlands, but there's a few outlier visitor races that have come along here. They are the Brokers and the Devourers. And they don't really necessarily belong in the Shadowlands. They come from outside areas, but they're here anyway.
All right, so here's the Brokers up first.
Right. And so the Brokers are from just an entirely different realm of existence. They are not native to the Shadowlands at all, but they just traverse the cosmos and multiverse and whatnot type of things. They are like the extreme like you know how goblins are obsessed with everything being for profit and stuff.
Right.
Brokers are goblins on steroids,
Ha.
cosmically. So yeah, they're all about like acquiring everything. They are much like, the goblins are divided into their cartels. There are like the different, trading groups and everything. It's even a part of their name. The trading clan that they're from is so let's see, what is this particular's name again?
This is Artificer,
Artificer.
Xy'mox, if I'm pronouncing that right.
And so that Xy'mox part, I believe in his case it's the Xy. He's from Cartel Xy, and that's the part of their name there. So it's always that some part of the name indicates what cartel they are with. And so we'll go more into this guy specifically later on. He is a raid boss in 2 raids, actually, in the Shadowlands, including Castle Nathria. And the whole thing with the relic cards, it all plays into there, actually. But we're not going to get into that now. All you need to know now is that the Brokers are the characters who are essentially, they're all the vendors in Oribos, because most citizens of the Shadowlands have no concept of trading with like mortal money and everything. And so the brokers are like, oh, we know all about that. We're happy to be the ones that you buy all your crafting supplies from and repair your gear and send you on quests in order to get things that we'll pay you for. And they basically fulfill all of those functions because no one else in the Shadowlands, these cosmic beings, don't really understand that. They also teach you all your crafting skills. Because like, why would people in the Shadowlands, when they're souls, know about tailoring? So yeah, they just fulfill all of those goals there, those game services. And they can be antagonists or they can be really useful, but the Devourers are nothing but antagonists here. These guys are literally just gorging themselves on anima. They just flip in from some parts unknown to through tears in reality, and as though the anima drought caused by all the souls going to the Maw, Denathrius hiding all of the mana wasn't bad enough. These guys come and they just consume everything. And so there's a few areas in almost every zone, I think. Maybe not Maldraxus, I can't remember. But where there's some areas that are just infested with these anima gorgers, and you have to fend them off in various different ways, because they are in a world where everything runs on anima and all the souls are made of anima. And if you die here, you're just anima and you don't come back. These guys are extremely dangerous. And so there's a few cards. Again, we also have a legendary that is another raid boss that we'll talk about later on in the sequel to this episode. But yeah, that is the deal with these guys. So the few cards, if you're wondering what those are, they don't belong here either, but they are here. And I think that is about all the main cards for us to talk about.
I think that's the main cards, but we were going to get into the class spells a little bit.
Right. So something that is really cool that I appreciate that they did. So something, and this is something I'm actually thinking of maybe writing a lore guide about at some point, that a lot of class spell cards in Hearthstone are the names of spells that either currently or at some point are class spells in World of Warcraft. Things like Ritual of Doom as a warlock. That's an actual spell. It's an ability that you have as a warlock. Just pulling off the top of my head there. But in Shadowlands, every class has a different unique ability you get depending on which of the 4 covenants you choose to join. Because yeah, there's this fun part where you do like a general story quest through all of them, but then you choose one that you're going to specifically work for. You get some exclusive quests experiencing on that character that you don't get on other characters who join other factions. You get some cool exclusive armor that's all themed off of it, which is honestly one of the main reasons my character joined Revendreth, because I just wanted the really, really cool armor.
It's a valid reason.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm glad you think so. Yeah, so what they did here is for each of the classes in Hearthstone, they chose a spell to represent one of the Covenant abilities that you get. Now, it's not representing all of them, of course, because every class has 4 different ones, but all of these are actual real-life abilities that you get depending on which covenant you choose to join with that class. So let's see, what are some of the examples that we have here?
The Demon Hunter has a Sinful Brand, which says it's a Demon Hunter Venthyr ability. Druid has Convoke the Spirits, which is a Druid Night Fae ability. The Hunter has Wild Spirits, which is a Hunter Night Fae ability. A Mage has Deathborn, which is a Mage Necrolord ability. Paladin has Divine Toll, which is a Paladin Kyrian ability. Priest has Boon of the Ascended, which is a Priest Kyrian ability. Shaman has Primordial Wave, which is a Shaman Necrolord ability. Rogue has Serrated Bone Spike, which is a Rogue Necrolord ability. Warrior has Conqueror's Banner, which is a Warrior Necrolord ability. And finally, the Warlock has Impending Catastrophe, which is a Warlock Venthyr ability.
Oh yeah, don't think that the puns are reserved to Hearthstone alone. WoW gets on that as well.
Oh,
the imp puns are everywhere.
Impending Catastrophe? Yeah, that's pretty funny.
And so, yeah, I just think that's so cool that they
impressive.
Yes. And it's quite inevitable too.
I love that the warrior legendary characters are in the art for these spells also. So if you look at them, you can see them in the background, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, and we get the same with others, like, Pelagos is Priest legendary, and he's in this card here for the Priest. A Covenant spell.
I love it.
Yeah, no, it's great. And then one other thing that we wanted to talk about a little bit are just explaining some of the hero skins that have come out and are coming out that are very Shadowlands themed.
Yeah, so let's do the old ones first. So these are already out, right? So we've got this was a bundle, I believe, or you could probably buy them individually. So there was a Demon Hunter, Druid, Paladin, and Warlock skins. This is where you get the Bluther skin, which is Shadowlands version we talked about earlier in the show.
Right.
Luther gets it.
Yes, and that is the only one that's actually like an actual thing that happened in the story. So that's accurately depicting, Uther as a Kyrian. The other 3 here are just continuing the Hearthstone fun what if scenario. So there is no Illidan as a Venthyr,
Is that
Malfurion.
Is that what he's supposed to be there? Event theory?
Yes.
That makes sense.
There's one representing each of the covenants there. So you have the Venthyr Illidan, and so you have the House of Rituals Gul'dan. I love the description there. It's like, unwilling to repent for all of his wicked deeds after death, Gul'dan just decided to continue doing more of them. House of Rituals is the one that Kel'Thuzad is in charge of, so... You know, they're cool with him doing all the wicked stuff. And then the one for Ardenweild is a Malfurion. Obviously, Malfurion is not dead yet in the story. Odds are he probably would go someplace like Ardenweild. But for this art, it's just the what if they kind of meshed Malfurion with the Winter Queen aesthetic there.
I love it. That's one of my favorite skins, actually. It's super cool.
Yeah, I do wanna. I'd love to get a hold of the Bluther and the House of Rituals Gul'dan. Like I love collecting versions of Gul'dan for some reason, and that was just really creepy and really cool.
I love it. All right, so here's some new ones though, and I don't know anything about these. So first up is Garrosh. This is one of the brand new ones. So Garrosh the Chained.
This is the main one that I wanted to talk about, in fact, because this one is actually a key part of the story that we haven't touched on. So, as I said, in Revendreth, they extract the anima from the prideful, the unrepentant souls. And
sounds like Garrosh.
Yes. Here's the thing: while the drought is going on, they literally describe Garrosh as a reliable workhorse because he is so filled with pride and the refusal to ever admit that his genocide was wrong that he is just this constant anima farm that they just keep chained up and torture the anima out of him, and he just keeps producing it more and more because he just has an endless pride and ego, and so much self-righteousness about orc supremacy and whatnot. So,
Garrosh.
Yeah, and he doesn't repent ever. Like, you see him go out in a raid while he's being tortured in the maw, and his final words are that, and not that coward Thrall, as like,
wow,
he goes out completely.
Never change, Garrosh. Never change.
Some people complain. Some people complain in Warcraft. It's like, oh, all the villains get redemptions and everything. That's not realistic. Well, here's Garrosh for you guys. He went out completely no longer existing, very consistent, not repenting once. You got what you wanted. There's a villain that's like that. So that's representing him in his, like, you see the anima just being leeched off of him in the portrait.
Yeah. In game it animates too. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. So that's the main one to talk about. But then we have some nice alternate depictions with two other hero cards. We have a Kel'Thuzad, who you'll see he has like a little slime kitty right there. I'm pretty sure that's a reference to like the Mr. Bigglesworth and whatnot.
Yeah.
What's the name for it though? They have a name for it.
So there's an alternate Mr. Bigglesworth skin for Battlegrounds for that one, and they call him I think it's Jigglesworth.
That'd be jiggle.
Yeah, so actually the slime constructs are actually a thing in the Maldraxus. They're made by the House of Plagues, and they are like, you have the bones and like little cat ones actually exist in the game.
What?
Yeah, that's a thing. So entirely reasonable that he'd have one there,
well, it looks exactly like it too. Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's very cute.
They're strangely adorable. Yes, They're just slimes around skeletons.
It's a jelly cat. Oh
man, but that would be an interesting cat cam for the stream.
Yeah.
Oh gosh. Okay, and then there's one more. Sorry. Lady Vashj is the other one.
Right. Again, nothing particular. Yeah, nothing particularly new or unique about this one, but again, like she is, being depicted as her Barroness Vashj version, and it's neat to have another chance of getting a Vashj skin. Of course, she'll be for shaman and whatnot, but for people like me who missed, didn't get the pre-order of Ashes of Outlands, and eventually they cycle back. Like as we're recording right now, they brought Lazul available for purchase again for a limited time.
I was
And
gonna
stuff.
say,
So
I heard there was some back in the shop right now.
yeah, Lazul and Maiev are currently back in the shop as of our recording. But this is another version of Vashj that it's nice to have a shot at her. And personally, I think it looks even cooler than the original Ashes of Outland version.
Oh, I
So,
agree. It looks very cool.
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, that's just her and her Baroness of Maldraxus version.
Nice.
And that's about all that we have for this installment. As I said, next time we will focus more on in-depth story of Revendreth because that's where the majority of the cards are. We'll talk all about even a lot of the cards. Some of you guys might be wondering, what are these weird-looking dredger things? What's that red smoky horse? What are the big brutish things that are called the biggins? We'll talk about all of that when we delve deep. But this is all we have time for now. We covered the basic structure of the entire realm of death. I think that's enough for one night.
I mean, yeah. It's not a light or small topic.
No.